What do you think of the notion of somebody having like a balanced, integrated, coherent ego by having done shadow work, breath work, whatever, when there's like a more coherence of working together with the ego versus somebody who has not done anything in the subconscious and is just purely, like going into the deep end and then like losing all control? Like, what do you think of that notion? Somebody like this and somebody like this going into a psychedelic experience.
Well, in general, I would say it's probably always helpful if you have some level of self-analysis and self-awareness. And if you have explored your shadows or your darker sides or things like that. But with that said, we can also see, sometimes you come across someone and they're super refreshing and you're just like, my God, you're just like so authentically yourself. And
Hmm.
you can even ask someone like, there's that phrase like, what work have you done on yourself? And sometimes the answer is like nothing. Like I am invested in being me and really
Hmm.
having my
Hmm.
experience. And then other times you get people who honestly they're trapped in the prison of perpetual self-therapy and self-awareness of like, well, right now I'm working on releasing my inner child and I'm having conversations with my inner parents and I've tried to connect the best I can to my ancestors and I've made peace with the violence of the genocide that was done against them and I'm looking to 7 generations in the future to create a sustainable version of myself, and it's just like, oh, can you just drop the bullshit story already? Like, where are you really?
Hmm.
And so that's where I don't see that there actually is a direct correlation between someone having, quote, done the inner work and really being available for being authentic and being
Hmm.
fully vulnerable, fully exposed, and fully embodied and empowered within their life.
Yeah.
So we're talking in generalities here, and what I always like to come back to is that ultimately each individual person is a unique individual person. And so my perspective is we were all the same universal being and consciousness. There's only one. That's what I'm a non-dualist, right? There's only one universal being in consciousness that is this being of the infinite energy of unconditional love, and it is perfectly self aware, and it manifests itself through fractal and geometric forms of energy. And that's how we get the reality that we live in now. But that each person is an expression of that universal being and consciousness that has been individuated through a particular body. And that body comes with a very individual life history. And that body also houses an egoic, self aware construct that has been shaped and formed by the unique experiences that this body has been through and the ways that those experiences have been received, integrated, processed, or repressed or denied by the individuated construct of the ego. So that ultimately every person is fundamentally unique. And that's where I like doing, not only do I do integration calls, but I also do preparation calls with people. And there, we don't ever start with, okay, well, let's do some meditation, let's do some breath work, let's do some internal self analysis. Usually, what I end up doing is I ask people, well, tell me about yourself, tell me about your life. And then I'll ask them questions like, do you love yourself unconditionally? And almost always the answer is like no. And sometimes it's like, I don't even know how, or that's a totally foreign concept. And then I'll ask people, where do you feel most authentic in your life? And where do you feel that there's the greatest congruence between what your inner state is and what your outer output is? And so I start looking at people as these energetic systems, and I'm looking for where are their distortions, where are their withholdings, where is their resistance, where is their bullshitting? 'Cause, I mean,
Hmm.
people are totally bullshit factories. Um, and then where is their authenticity? Where is their genuineness? And that's where I want to start with each person, is
Hmm.
we're looking at each person as a unique expression of this universal consciousness. So
So, do you think it's fair to say that either there is an inclination towards the full acceptance of the visceral experience that the person is going through, or there is a resistance towards viscerally feeling what the experience is of the person?
Yes, and there's a whole spectrum and range of degrees, and it's always important, even in giving that kind of analysis, of looking at, there might be things viscerally that you're experiencing that you don't want to. Some of them might be self-created. Some of them might be a feedback loop that you have created for yourself. And so we want to look at that. And then also there might be, like I myself have a chronic sleep disorder, which often produces very uncomfortable physical sensations in my body. So like me as an individual, we could say, I'm not creating these sensations. They are happening. So how am I managing them? How am I living with them? And, there's lots of different ways that people experience things that are uncomfortable or viscerally encountered, that might be mental, emotional, physical, any combination of those. And that it's not that we just want to tell people like, okay, so you feel miserable, great, feel that all the way. But that sometimes when people do feel miserable, they want to put on a face that says, oh, I'm not miserable, or I'm managing, or I'm doing okay. But maybe underneath that, maybe there's some grieving and sorrow that needs to take place. Maybe there's even some anger that needs to be released. So it is about looking at, is the experience being processed as authentically and as fully as possible. And, as a general rule, this is really, really vague, but often it's the case that women are much more accessible to their emotional spectrum than men are. And often when working with men, they might say like, oh yeah, I can access anger like really easily, but like nothing else. And then also because the way people are socialized, men, for example, do tend to deny pain more than women do, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain. So there's always, well, almost always ways that we can help people access, these deeper states. And then also, since I'm just making very generic comparisons, on the female side of things, this is largely, I think, due to socialization, that there's much more a tendency for women to try and be people pleasers and to serve others and to put other people's needs and desires and comforts ahead of their own. So there are ways that people are not optimized in their direct experience of loving and caring for themselves, and that they take on different either gendered or social roles that they then perform as, that often prevent them from loving themselves unconditionally and being happy. And even there, that a lot of times people in the spiritual world or the therapeutic world or the spiritual therapeutic world, they talk about how, well, you can manifest anything you want in your life, and that the abundance is available for everyone, and that if you really get clear on all of this stuff, that you'll just be happy and satisfied and nurtured all the time. And that's just another really deep pathological layer of bullshit right there, because it's just not true. And so helping people discover the truth within themselves, I think that that's the most important thing that we can do. And again, it's often really uncomfortable doing that and uncovering where are our patterns of compensation or self-delusion that are getting in the way of really being present. Because sometimes reality will make you mad. Sometimes it will hurt. Sometimes it will be unsatisfying. Sometimes it will be terrifying. And sometimes it will be what you don't want. But that's what reality is. And then other times it will be ecstatic. It will be pleasurable. It will be rewarding. It will be abundant. But to walk around with the idea of everything's going to go my way forever, and I'm just going to be perfect and totally self-regulated, and everything's going to be awesome, that is just spiritual gaslighting. So I'm really opposed to that. But I think I've gone off on a tangent. So I'll pull back and let you ask your next question or make your next comment. Yeah.